Hello, this is Amy from Decatur County Schools Digital Learning with an overview of this year's plan to implement Google Classroom with consistency and simplicity to enable all of our parents, students, and staff to communicate no matter what we face through face-to-face or distance learning. We're going to talk about setting up your classroom in a consistent manner that has been established through many collaborative sessions over the past 2 weeks. We will discuss things you might consider doing during your first 2 weeks face-to-face, should we be so fortunate, and what to think about before launching 1 to 2 weeks of distance learning. The first thing I'd like to do is invite you to join the Google Classroom support class. You may use the code right here, 3VE7EAF, to join. This room in your classroom will live right next to the classrooms that you create. The idea is that we can put quick tutorials and strategies to help you as you work in Google Classroom throughout the year. We will put them right in here, right next to where you're working, so you don't have to go chasing information. We are asking every Google teacher, and all of us are Google teachers this year, to create a Google Classroom for every class that they teach. We are asking them to have those classes established by August 29th. All you need to do to establish a class is to make it and create the infrastructure we will show you here. Please create some kind of way to post your classroom code in your classroom. You see an example right here. You will follow the step-to-step directions of joining Google Classroom, selecting the role of a teacher, going to the plus sign to add your first class, creating a class, giving it a name, selecting a class code, and then you can even personalize your class. I'd like to make one recommendation to everybody. When you are selecting your class code, if they generate one with a 1, an L, a 0, or an O, remember to change that code in the settings before going live. Do not post a code with those letters or numbers because they're difficult to read in Google's font. When in Google Classroom, there's 2 places to find settings. One place is at the top right while inside of a class. The other place is on the left side when you're doing settings for your entire classroom. We're talking about inside your specific class right now. We want to have consistent expectations and settings. The idea is to simplify communications for our parents and students. From kindergarten through 12th grade, it will be clear exactly where to go to find your assignments, to find what you're supposed to do, and to connect with your teachers in class. In a typical situation, this would not be so important to have everyone have the exact same settings. But for what we're trying to do this year, the more consistent that we are, the less time our classroom teachers, who are experts in instruction, will spend trying to be experts in troubleshooting computer problems. This will allow other people to step in and triage some of those typical problems students and parents have finding things when they're getting used to the system. In our general settings area, we will all be using the stream setting of only allowing teachers to post or comment. You can't control what students put in a comment if you don't do this, and we do not want student comments that are personal in nature that might violate FERPA to be publicly posted. We would also like you to hide notifications for the stream. This will create a more simplistic and easy to follow template for your parents. Do not show deleted items as well. Check that that's off and generate your classroom code for Meet. We will be using Meet to communicate with our students if we have to have live sessions during distance learning. You want to make that code visible to your students. We'll talk. All right, the last part we need to do in the personal settings or the specific settings for your classroom are grading settings. We've had a lot of discussion, but we have decided there will be no overall grade calculation within Google Classroom. Please do not use categories or grade calculation or show overall grades within your Google Classroom. Turn that off here. There are some other settings we need to talk about. You will go back out into your Google Classroom to the area at the top left where there's 3 lines. This will allow us to set one setting for your entire classroom. When you find that, you need to scroll all the way down the menu to where it says settings. If you have a lot of classes, this might take a little while to get to the bottom. When you click here, you will probably see something that looks like this with a lot of blue lines. We don't want to see any of those lines. We're hoping that you will think of your Google Classroom, the physical classroom that you create in Google, as your Tier 1 and even Tier 2 location of communication. Your general Tier 1 information will go out through announcements and classroom assignments. And then you might have students comment directly to you within assignments, and that would be personal and protected, and thereby no FERPA violation. And you can use that as your Tier 2. If you need to move to Tier 3, very specific situations, at that point, you would bring that into an email. At this time, we'll go into your classroom and we'll look at how we will set it up inside. Everyone will be working from the classwork part of their Google Classroom. The only announcement that you would ever make on the stream would be to introduce yourself and remind your students that they need to go to the classwork section. We are fortunate that our students will be one-to-one with Chromebooks. That means that everyone's Chromebook will have a similar screen. That screen will show the tabs at the top. When we had many devices in our students' hands, perhaps a phone, a tablet, a PC at home, maybe even an iPad, our students may have seen the menu for this in a different place. That was a troubleshooting problem that has been relieved by giving everyone a Chromebook. We want to now give them a consistent view within the Chromebook so we can continue to simplify troubleshooting and get about teaching our kids. In the Classworks tab, we are going to have some common practices. This isn't to say we are telling you what to send your students to do as work and how they should work. We are talking about the vehicle you will use to communicate with your students. The things that you know as experts are the things that they need to do. In your Classworks page, there will be a place at the top that has the Meet link that you've made visible, a Google Calendar link that takes your students and you out to your personal Google Calendar, and a Class Drive folder. You can put common resources in your Class Drive folder and direct your students right to there from this page easily to find those resources. You can use the Google Calendar for students who have multiple classes. If we use consistent dating methods, the students' work will show up on the exact same day in the calendar, and they won't have to go into many classrooms within the day. They can follow their calendar to simplify communication. You will always use the Google Meet link that's inside Classworks to join a class. Don't be confused by the numbers and letters of the link that are on the front of your classroom. That's for something different. We will always consistently enter through this Google Meet link. We will always consistently enter through this Google Meet link. Inside the Classwork tab of every Google Classroom in Decatur County Schools, from kindergarten through 12th grade, we will use the exact same structure for communicating assignments. This may be different than something you've done before, but the idea is that we need to create consistency and we need to use this regularly so our students will be comfortable and our parents will be comfortable. The Today's Work section is one topic area we will use. You can use Emojipedia to find the target to put at the beginning of today's work in that section. We want everyone to name it today's work. Please don't use a different name like homework or to-do list or important or hey, you read this or anything like that. We want it to say today's work. Also, we would like you to make a topic called this week. We want you to use some kind of calendar emoji from the Emojipedia at the beginning of this week. Our intention is that no matter who is confused about what's happening in their classroom, who calls the school, from the secretaries to the librarians to the counselors to the principals and assistant principals, right down to the parapros and classroom teachers, everyone have a general idea of the structure of the classroom and be able to quickly give pointers and triage some of those troubleshootings that we need to do. Inside today's work, we will date by the conventional date or the date of the week. For primary kids, you might want to use a color to designate each day of the week if they're not reading completely yet. That will be another cue you can give them to help them to know which one is important. We want to put one thing under today's work. Inside that assignment, you can organize yourself in whatever way fits your instructional style, your students' needs, and the content you're delivering. When you have finished the day with the students, the children have done their assignment, then that assignment can be moved down to the this week category. We would like to collect all of the assignments for a week together in that category so that a student who might not have Wi-Fi on Monday because they're not with their parents, they're somewhere else, or there was a storm, can still get to that Monday assignment on Tuesday after they finish their work Tuesday easily without having to scroll all over the classroom page. Everyone in the system is going to be sending home a template with students that outlines what to look for. Parents will know from the very first day they receive their Chromebooks what their classroom codes will be and where to look to find assignments. This has been organized by your admin to help you, and there's even information right next to the classroom codes about when those classes would be live for live sessions in distance learning. We will be able to enable the parent guardian link inside Google Classroom that updates parents on missing work, upcoming work, and class activities and announcements. We will roll that out after the first month of school. It is very possible the emails in Infinite Campus will not match the real email that person is using. Please help us make an effort to gather those emails, get that information to your data clerks and to your offices so they can put it in Infinite Campus. And first period teachers, homeroom teachers, put your class's emails in the system under People in the Classwork tab, and then everyone will be able to have those emails and communicate consistently with parents. You do not have to use the same format in your today's work section. Different people have chosen to do things differently. Some people are using slides to launch assignments. Some people are putting one page with hyperlinks and a hyperdoc from a Google Doc inside their assignment. Some people are just saying read pages 1 through 20. We are not dictating the content that you give your students. You know your content and you know your best practices. We are asking you to help them learn the system of organizing information and delivering communication to them, both face-to-face and through distance learning, so that distance learning is not as difficult. You can use emojis, bitmojis, and cute characters to make this seem more fun and less like homework, but it's a serious business. We want to know how they're doing when they're not with us. We want to quickly gather information about students who need meals, students who have social emotional issues, some that need assistance, and we want to know what's getting in the way of them getting their work done or if they need any help. You can take this information from the spreadsheet that is generated and quickly give names to different people within the school to help you. This way you can get back quickly to the business of teaching your students. Many people have asked about Bitmoji during our collaborative sessions so far this year. Bitmoji is a great tool, but it is also a social tool that we cannot control. We're not saying you can't use a Bitmoji that's appropriate in something that you publish for your students. By all means, make your thing social and relevant. Please think about the content in the Bitmoji the way you do with all the other content that you deliver to your students. There's content within the Bitmoji files that changes regularly and sometimes is inappropriate for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. Please do not add a Bitmoji app or extension to your Chromebook. We also want you to consider the following factors as you discuss with your colleagues the things that will be happening at your school. Think about the behavior and communication expectations you have for your students. Where do they access learning materials? How do they know they've completed something? How do you know? Where do they turn it in? When should they check in? When are their assignments going to be due for you? Please consider doing at least one of the following things the first week of school if we have face-to-face instruction. And keep in mind that you might have to condense these expectations into a shorter time period depending on our situation with COVID-19. Your students should log into Google Classroom within the first week, and your code should be posted in your room. Communicate with the parents about the expectations you have. Use the template we've already created. Start collecting parent emails. Make one form for your students to practice sending information in. Try to have one digital assignment that you would have your students do and turn in, and then deliver that assignment as a guided lesson where you model the internal thinking that a student could have when they're deciding where to click and what to do within the system. It may seem silly, but many of our students do not have that internal dialogue naturally. Explore and use at least one resource within Google Classroom your first week face-to-face with students. During the second week, we again want our students to log into Google Classroom from home. We'd like you to try a Google Meet in class. That means hosting it as if it was a virtual meeting where everyone has their Chromebook open and on, but you don't actually have a virtual meeting. It gives you a chance to look at behaviors and expectations during that Google Meet. If you do this in your classroom, everyone, including the teacher, needs to have a muted microphone or the feedback will be difficult. But the effort to do this now is well worth it when we go distance learning, or you're going to have lots of issues that are more difficult to control. Add your guardian emails to your first period or homeroom class. Ask your students to access and complete at least one digital assignment through Google. Have them do this independently. Use this as an opportunity to think formatively about your students. Assess your own instructions. Where are my students getting lost? What do they not know how to do without support? You can use Screencastify to create more clear directions for them, or you can clarify it in class while they're there with you. In middle school and high school, please familiarize your students with the calendar and to-do list. Your lead teachers and the teachers that came to Googly Collaboratives will have all kinds of strategies for that, as we had great discussion about how to simplify the student interface at the age where they have multiple teachers and multiple classes. We need to think about distance learning expectations. We need to think about consistency. What you do changes the messaging to the parent that may have a student in another classroom. We want to be consistent across our system if we can, whenever we can, to simplify and take off the pressure that distance learning creates for our families and kids. If we don't practice and inspect what we expect, we can't expect it. Troubleshoot some scenarios with your students in class and take the time now so you won't have to take it later. The more confident our students feel, the more empowered they will be, and the more effective our distance learning program will be this year. Thank you for your patience, your positive attitudes, and the gracious way that you've accepted me into the Decatur County School community this year. I'm here to support you, and all of the digital learning and curriculum staff are here to support you too. Reach out if you have any questions, and have a great year.